Hello, friends. Welcome once again to Ready Next. On this episode, I am really thrilled to introduce my special guest, Femi Longe. Femi has spent the last 2 decades passionately helping individuals and organizations realize their full potential, driving them to excel and contribute to a better world. About a decade ago, Femi, along with his colleagues Tunji Alesho and Dr. Bosun Tijani, Nigeria's current Minister of Communications, Innovation and Digital Economy, co-founded Co-Creation Hub, popularly known as ccHub. As the Director for Innovation at ccHub, Femi thrived on tackling diverse social and business challenges through collaborative, problem-solving approaches. Femi is particularly passionate about the mutual value that gets unlocked through collaborations between startups and larger organizations, including government. His deep expertise in this area aims to level the playing field and foster more of such partnerships across the continent and actually across the world. Join me as I explore this and much more with Femi. Hello, Femi.
Hi, Dustin. Great to be here.
I have been looking forward to this conversation because I think that there are many places we need to go with the discussion. I think first for me is just to take a step back and look at your backstory. I happen to remember that we went to the same alma mater, Great Ife as it's called, Obafemi Awolowo University. And I just want to understand, pivotal moments, maybe from school or even outside school that shaped your career so far and your path.
Great to be here. Yeah, we were in Ife together many years ago, actually decades ago now.
Okay.
I'd say I think the biggest pivotal moment in my career and maybe my life professionally happened actually in Ife. And
Wow.
it was when I stumbled into an organization that has been an intricate part of my life since. It's called AIESEC.
Yes, I remember AIESEC.
It was a student leadership organization that I stumbled into in my first year in university. And in many ways, I was studying electrical electronics engineering. I wasn't the best of students. I think I still believe that 17 is too young an age to determine what you want to be in the future.
Oh.
And unfortunately, that's a system that we ran. But in AIESEC, I discovered I got into conversations around your values, your vision, what you want to be in the future, leadership as an individual, and the idea that you need to be a change agent. It can't just be about you. Your life has to contribute to something greater than you. And it influenced a lot for me. So I went high in the organization. At some point, I was president of AIESEC in Nigeria. Then I went to South Africa to start the AIESEC African office.
Amazing.
And then I moved to Rotterdam to the global headquarters of AIESEC as director for Africa for 1 year.
Fantastic.
And I mention AIESEC because beyond the early professional skills that I gained there, I also gained friendships that continued with me through my life and through work. So when I was president of AIESEC in Ife, in Nigeria, we were on the board together. And then he was my vice president then. And then a few years later, we co-founded Co-Creation Hub or ccHub. One of my good friends there, who was my vice president, joined us in that early foundation of ccHub. So ccHub was founded by 3 people who probably would never have met if AIESEC did not bring us together.
Amazing.
When I left AIESEC Global Head Office as director, I then went for an internship in the UK. At that point, I think I'd already, from all those conversations about what do you want to be in the future, what are you excited about, what interests you, I'd started to narrow down the areas where I was interested in delving deeper and contributing. I used to call it my 3 E's. One was education. The other was entrepreneurship. I called the third one emigration. But for me, it was more around how do we tap into the knowledge base of Africans that are everywhere in the world, that the continent desperately needs to thrive, but somehow we're not able to. I think right now the diaspora is mostly tapped into for remittances.
Correct.
The amount of brain trust that lies in the African diaspora for me is too massive. But also the amount of brain trust that lies in people in Africa and the amount of potential that we have that is damned, that can't actually express itself for me it was so large. And so those three E's in many ways guided my journey to the UK. So when I went to the UK, I worked in an education consultancy.
Right.
Called Branston Square, and I worked there. Branston Square was more working around learning spaces and redesigning learning spaces. For me, it was an opportunity to understand the British education system, which was the model for the Nigerian education system.
Right. Yes.
However, the Nigerian education system did not evolve where the British did. So I wanted to go understand the source, to understand where we got it wrong.
Yeah.
To understand what kind of things we could go back home and change. When I finished my internship there, I then joined an organization that's also been extremely pivotal in my life and my journey. It was called the Young Foundation.
Right.
The Young Foundation, I joined them to set up a leadership development program to get young people from ethnic minorities and poor white communities in the UK into public leadership. But the Young Foundation itself was named after a guy called Lord Michael Young.
Right.
He's acclaimed to be the UK's biggest social entrepreneur of all time. By the time he died in his 80s, he had been involved directly or indirectly in setting up close to 60 organizations.
Wow.
In 1948, he wrote the Labour Party manifesto that founded the NHS, the National Health Service. And his philosophy in life was, if you see a problem, instead of complaining about it, why don't you create a solution to it?
Amazing.
And so there at the Young Foundation, I got to exposed to the concept of social innovation, because the Young Foundation was the UK's former social innovation center. And the idea that you can actually apply innovation to solve social problems. And you can build entities, commercial entities, non-profit entities to actually tackle social problems. But also at the Young Foundation, I got my first taste at something called a hackathon, which is a hackathon, an experience where you bring people together to come and build solutions to social problems. So participated in my first ever hackathon there, enjoyed it, and had been in conversation with my friend Bosun, who was also going on a similar but different journey. Again, we met in AIESEC, and all through the journey, the conversation was, what can we go back home
with?
To?
Yes.
What can we do to go trigger the kind of change that we believe we need in our continent, in our country? And that conversation, he also participated in that hackathon with me, and we enjoyed the experience and decided, okay, let's go back to Nigeria. Let's actually go run a social innovation hackathon in Nigeria. And we ran social innovation camp in, I think, December 2010. And then ccHub, Co-Creation Hub, was launched in 2011.
Amazing.
And the idea...
If I pause you there, because you said a lot, very short period of time, and I think I like the tapestry of your journey. Many questions already. Before I stopped you because I know that you were going to step into the ccHub narrative, and we will get there in a moment. But I find it fascinating, and I think I want to hear your view on this, that having an organization like AIESEC, at a very pivotal time in a young person's life, whether it's AIESEC, whether it's Young Leaders, whether it's LEAP, whatever the program is, what do you think is the value of having young people engaged in kind of programs early?
There's a lot of value in that, and it's actually a project that I'm also working on at the moment. Like I said, I think the way education systems are structured at the moment, and particularly in Nigeria and Africa, forcing young people around specific career paths too early, without clearly understanding the range of their options, as well as understanding themselves.
Yeah.
They are and who they're imagining to be is extremely limiting.
Absolutely.
And the side effect of that is people ending up in courses in universities that doesn't match their personality, that they hate, but in some ways they're maybe even trying to live out their parents' dreams and forgotten ambitions.
Vicariously living out their parents' aspirations. Yeah.
So getting access to opportunities, experiences, organizations that help young people to actually explore, try things out, try a range of different work types, work categories, experiences, so that they get to understand more about themselves, what their skills are, what they're good at, what their interests are, what they're not interested in, the kind of work environment where they thrive, the kind of work environment they don't thrive in. And at the same time, understand the diversity of opportunities as well as challenges that there are in the world, that they can actually be building their interests and building their experiences,
the opportunities and challenges,
and the scale of the opportunities. So rather than teaching them what to think or how to think, what to think, teaching them how to think.
Yes.
Right? Showing them specific things that they need to memorize, teaching them how to learn and unlearn and relearn. And that was what AIESEC was for me. As a student leader in AIESEC, I gave my first ever training, my first ever presentation. It was crap.
Yeah.
But by the time I was done in AIESEC, I'd done it more than 60 times. I was already extremely proficient. I was consistently scoring A's for my presentations. I learned how I teach for people to understand. I learned that teaching and education was, for me, extremely important. It's why years later, when I went back to school, I went to do a master's in education and learning science, because I realized, okay, this is my personality. This is who I am. This is what I'm good at. My strength is in taking complex concepts and explaining them in an extremely simple way without people losing the essence. And I discovered all of that about myself there. I got exposed to stories of change makers, people like Mohammed Yunus, who started Grameen.
Yes, amazing man.
People, Gandhi, people like tons of different change agents. I got exposed to the concept that, look, you may think you're too small to make an impact, except you've not spent one night in a room with a mosquito. Realize how much impact a tiny person can have.
Yes.
But if this world is going to get better, it's going to come from tiny actions from single individuals.
Absolutely.
Exposing young people to this, exposing young people to a diversity of opportunities actually helps to help them to discover what their potential is, what their competencies are, and to develop it, and to figure out what path they're going to go on for work.
That's brilliant.
I think the world we live in is very different from our parents' age, where you start in a job and you're in there for 35 years before you retire.
That's gone now.
We're in an age of invention and reinvention. You're going to consistently be reinventing yourself.
Yes.
And that's what organizations like that do for young people, teaching them the skills to be able to, the competencies to be able to do that effectively.
Absolutely. And I think, I like the way you kind of laid that out and used, the narrative of what AIESEC gave you, to illustrate that. And I'm very, very interested in the conversation about young adults and what you were thinking around that. We'll take that offline. But I wanted to also, before we talk about ccHub, just touch on the Diaspora Brain Trust. So, talk to me a little bit about what you mean when you talk about the Diaspora Brain Trust and what the value is. There's a value in those who are still back, say, for instance, in Nigeria. But how about the Nigerian diaspora, the value they bring, and where are we missing? What's the missing link?
So I think the missing link is in a culture that doesn't appreciate intangibles as much as it should. So unfortunately, when people that lead a lot of our countries see the diaspora. They see the money that they can give.
Yes.
But they don't see, and they haven't figured out, how do we tap into the exposure and the knowledge that they have as a means of solving problems that we have that seem intractable.
Yeah.
The part of the challenge with, and I found this a lot working in Nigeria and living in Nigeria, is that you're so close to the problem that you don't have perspective to be able to actually see what the possible solutions are. And the benefit of being a bit detached from it on the outside is that you actually have opportunity to see all the different elements that potentially are contributing to create the problem, so you can actually figure out what solutions potentially can be. But you've also experienced a different reality. And I mean, in Nigeria, we say our leaders, they keep going to the West and they see how those countries, they see that those countries are working. Can they come and do the same back home?
Correct.
What they don't see is the padding that's happening under the water. What the diaspora gets to see when they actually work in systems in these countries is they actually get to see the paddling that's happening under the water.
Yeah. And
they see the engine room
of that engine room and part of that building process.
Correct. And so, and one of the things I found when I returned back to Nigeria just before we started ccHub, and I saw it for the first 6 months and a year, and after 9 months, they couldn't say it to me anymore, was every time you give a suggestion, people say, you've not been here long. it doesn't work that way here.
Yes.
And we use that as a defense mechanism to shut down diaspora, shut down thoughts that may be coming from outside that may actually have the potential to transform the system.
Absolutely.
A country that I see that has, or two countries that I see that are also massive countries that have leveraged their diaspora very well, are China and India.
Absolutely.
100%. If you look at India at the moment, there is the Indians have been able to brand themselves as the technology talent capital of the world. And that's translated into looking at the top tech companies that have their CEOs as Indian, from Microsoft to Alphabet to IBM, you name it.
It's remarkable.
Right? And this comes from, and all of these are diaspora Indians.
Correct.
They are NRI, as they call them, non-resident
Indians, yes.
How do we move from not seeing us as diaspora or you're not from here to seeing us non-resident Nigerians? And seeing that as an asset that can be used in tackling real problems. My friend, the minister, did a tweet that got heavily bashed when he tweeted at the diaspora doctors from Nigeria and said, what do you think about a platform for you to give part of your time for consultation for people back home? And he got flayed on social media. Oh, we don't even have the basics and you're talking about. But the truth is, the amount of doctors that have left the country and the amount of value that we can capture by giving them access to continue to give their skills to tackle our health challenges in the country are massive. There was an epidemic in Malawi a while back, I think a couple of decades ago. And when I was in the UK, and in the UK, they were thinking about donating money to go help them in Malawi. And someone was on air and said there are more Malawian doctors in the UK than there are doctors in Malawi.
Absolutely.
You give them all this money, but it's a health epidemic. But you've taken the actual human resource that are actually going to implement the change that's actually going to solve the problem. What is the value?
What's the value? What's the value? And I agree with you. And that takes me to the conversation about ccHub. Very, very well storied what you guys have been able to achieve. But I want you to take us back to the early days. What was the thesis? What did you see? And then maybe talk a little bit about some of the memorable things that you got to do as ccHub.
So like I said, ccHub was thinking has always been, what can we do to contribute to Nigeria from where we are? Initially, our thought was actually ccHub was not our first business together. Our first business together was actually a t-shirt business.
Amazing.
So
as all classic entrepreneurs, there's something like Airbnb. They had this. They make conflicts at some point to try and promote.
We made t-shirts that promoted Nigerian pride at a time when Nigerian pride wasn't really big globally. But then, as we started thinking bigger in terms of how we could influence the system, the conversation was, should we pick a specific issue that we can actually create a solution around, or should we build a platform for people who want to solve problems to actually get the support that they need? Our thought was that we'll probably have more leverage if we created a platform versus if we actually picked one specific issue and tackled. And so we built and we launched ccHub as a platform for anyone who has a solution to a real human problem in Nigeria that's affecting quality of life for Nigerians, to be able to find all the support that they need to get their ideas off the ground. So whether it was a comfortable place to work from, uninterrupted power, quality internet, access to networks that can help you distribute your ideas, funding, other people that are going through similar experiences, knowledge, that they could come to that one place and have it as one resource that they could tap into to get their ideas off the ground.
Brilliant.
So we started with a few hackathons, we ran the first ever hackathon in Nigeria people actually had to build. And we were amazed at the response. It was the first time that Nigerians had been invited to a room to address Nigeria's problems, but not from the point of view of who do we blame, but from the point of view of, and what can we do about it?
Absolutely.
It was a very different kind of narrative for Nigerians at that time. This is 2010, 2011.
Right.
Where majority of the tech startups in Nigeria were trying to build the African clone for, you name a Western startup. We want to be an African Facebook, the Nigerian Amazon, the Nigerian Netflix, right? Which usually started not from the point of view of what's the problem we're trying to solve, but what business model have we seen that succeeded somewhere else in the world that we can come and duplicate back home? Which is the model that we've used for that development agencies have used for Nigeria and Africa for years.
Yeah,
it worked in Indonesia, come and try it. It worked in Lebanon, come and try it. It worked in the US, come and try it. Without thinking about what exactly is the local context, what's the need locally, and how is it different. And so in our first hackathon, where we launched on social media and said, if you have a problem, a solution to a problem that Nigerians face that can be delivered with digital technology, even if you don't have the skills to build it, send it in. We got more than 60 ideas.
Amazing.
We narrowed it down. People were excited about it. We brought them into a space at Pan-African University back then, EDC, thanks to Mr. Peter Bankole, who was very supportive. They hosted us over the weekend, got Google to give 1,500, got Main One, I think, to give a few hundreds of thousands of naira. Ran it, brought people in to come and code other people's ideas. People enjoyed the experience. Like, they absolutely enjoyed the experience. It was a fest.
Amazing.
Most times Nigerians gathered, all they do is they bitch about the problem and end with, God help us, or it is well.
It is well, I was going to say.
For a change, it wasn't come and talk about the problem, is let's craft a solution.
Fantastic.
We saw it, we did the first one, it worked, we realized, okay, we need to do it again. The community has started building, people wanted to do it more. And so we did the second one, which was then focused on governance, and said, if you have an idea that will... So I think this was 2011, the election that brought in Jonathan.
Yes.
President, which they were hailing as Nigeria's first social media election.
Yes.
So we said, well, democracy doesn't end with elections, it's actually everything that happens afterwards. If you have an idea that will give citizens a bigger say in how Nigeria is governed, even after the elections, leveraging technology, even if you don't have the capability to build it, send your idea. We'll find people. same companies, a few additional companies came in. EDC agreed to host us again. More people came in, some of whom were in the first one. They were enjoying the experience. We were enjoying the experience too. Ideas were designed. We'd learned some things after the first one in terms of how we provide. But we realized actually we need a place where this kind of work can happen daily. It can't be
yes.
It can't be an event based. It can't be a periodic thing. And so we need a physical space for this. And reached out to a couple of people from that event. Eventually got to Media Networks and Indigo Trust to put the first funds down. We got the space in Yaba. And it became ground zero. It became ground zero for the startup ecosystem. I'd say we changed the conversation for people trying to copycat solutions from everywhere to people now start looking at local problems and having that as a trigger for the new solutions and the new startups they were building.
Fantastic.
And yeah, it's grown from there. We've since expanded. Now we're now in 4 countries. We're now in. We opened a space in Rwanda, I think, in 2018. We acquired our big brother / top competitor in Africa, iHub.
Yes.
In 2014. Last year we launched in Namibia. A couple of years ago we actually opened the second space in Lagos, which was Facebook's first and only investment in a co-working space anywhere in the world.
Wow.
In Nigeria, and it's basically grown in leaps and bounds from there. All through the focus has been on social innovation, on innovation that solves people's real human problems, but that also run in a financially sustainable way. So we believe the power of business, the tool of business can be used alongside the heart of nonprofits or the heart of impact organizations to create solutions that are solid businesses but that solve real human problems. And that's what we've stimulated and continue to stimulate in lots of different sectors.
I think it's phenomenal what you, Osun, and the team have been able to achieve in,
There was also Tunji Elesho who was with us.
Yes. From that trial, pioneering what became, Nigeria's startup ecosystem. I mean, because of you guys, Yaba is now seen as you said, ground zero, for the Nigerian startup ecosystem. But you've gone beyond that as well, as you mentioned, and expanded across Africa. And you guys are, you're signposted by many other countries on the continent as a great example, flying the flag for innovation that comes homegrown, But when we say homegrown, we also see that you've intelligently co-opted and brought in partners across the world from, the tech industry itself to international development across the spectrum. You've brought them in beyond just the startups and the visionaries that start these enterprises. What do you think should be the right ingredients for continue to spark innovation in Nigeria across the African continent within the startup ecosystem? Because I think that we're only just getting started. I feel that you guys have set an excellent precedent. What should version 2 of that start to look like?
So I think that there's 2 sides. So one part of it, and it's also part of what I touched before. I think part of what we have that is unique when you compare us to the rest of the world, we often look at it as a negative, but that's because we haven't gotten the right lens. And that is unique problems and a unique context around which you build. I think that unique problem or the unique context are the seeds for the kind of startups that you won't see in the West because they don't have those problems, but that would end up being global dominators because those problems exist across Africa in most cases, across the developing world in most cases. And so we still need people, we need pioneers who can spot those unique problems and craft unique solutions to them. Not trying to copy what's been done somewhere else in the world, but looking at the problem uniquely from a center standpoint, engaging with the people who are going through the problem, and think about what unique ways can we combine technology that we have access to create solutions to address those. So I see that as something that we still need more of.
More pioneers.
I recognize there are lots of people in space that follow trend. So if what the investors are funding now is fintech, then let's do fintech. If what they're funding now is AI, then let's do AI. If what they're funding now is blockchain, then let's do blockchain. And what you find is that is leading, the technology is leading, not the problem or the need. And the direction of investors are leading. So that once investors change focus, then that company in many cases doesn't see a need to survive.
Fair point.
Right?
Yes.
And I think it should be the other way around. We need more people still looking at the many problems we have and creating unique, interesting things that can tackle them. I think we also need to start moving from startup to scale up. And that's also an area where we have lots of struggle. I think we need ways in which we can interface with. So at the Young Foundation, which I referenced earlier, there's an interesting paper there around how social change happens. They talk about the symbiosis of the trees and the bees. And bees are categorized as startups. They're the ones that pollinate plants, right?
Yes.
Ones that can take risks. But if you want to get to scale, you need the deep roots of a tree and the thick branches of a tree for scale. And you can find that typically either in big corporates or you find that in government. And so we need better integrations of government and corporates with our startups. So the startups are the engine for the innovation, while they're leveraging the rails of government and big corporate for scale. And we don't have enough of that at the moment. So unfortunately, at least in Nigeria, you see lots of corporates trying to start initiatives that are challenging existing startups rather than looking at possibility of partnering or acquiring. You find in a lot of the West. So a lot of startup acquisitions in the West, in the US, are done by big corporates. You don't have enough of that. You don't have nearly enough of that on our continent.
Yeah.
And we need more of that so that the good ideas that we have can actually reach more people.
Absolutely.
We also need more diffusion of good ideas across the continent. Because again, the problems you find in one country at many levels are similar to what you find in a number of other countries. If a solution is working well in one African country, we need to find a way to get it to as many Africans across the continent that have similar problems.
That's brilliant. And I think this symbiosis that you talk about between all of the stakeholders, the entrepreneur and the pioneering entrepreneurs are absolutely vital. But then I like the analogy of the trees and the bees, the deeply rooted entities that also can provide cover and provide all of the resourcing, that helps you scale. It's absolutely how it's done in the West, or how they have evolved to doing it. Right. Thanks for joining us on this fantastic episode with Femi Longe. It's the first of a 2-part series, so watch out for part 2. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Also subscribe to be the first in line to know when a new episode drops. See you on the next one. Bye for now.